The breaking point. The emergency klaxons echoed through the crystalline halls of the Nexus Trade Council, their haunting melody a death song for another fallen star system. Ambassador Elena Vasquez sat perfectly still in her designated human chair, watching as 400 alien species descended into chaos around her. The holographic display above the central dais flickered with devastating updates. Kepler 442 system, 17 billion inhabitants, completely dark. No survivors, no wreckage, just empty space where thriving worlds had existed mere hours before. The Zilithian Prime Minister, his 6 arms gesturing wildly in apparent distress, projected his crystalline voice across the chamber. The silent plague advances faster than our computational models predicted. At this rate, we have perhaps 64 standard cycles before it reaches the core worlds. His species had ruled a third of the galaxy for over 10,000 years, their technology so advanced they considered themselves gods. Yet here they stood, helpless as cosmic parasites devoured everything in their path. Elena watched the display cycle through system after system. The silent plague left no trace of its victims, no debris fields or radiation signatures. Entire civilizations simply ceased to exist, as if they had never been born. The pattern was always the same. First, the outer planets would go dark, their energy signatures vanishing from long-range sensors. Then the inner worlds would follow, one by one, until nothing remained but empty space and the terrifying silence that gave the plague its name. The morphic collective's representative, a floating mass of bioluminescent tentacles housed in a containment sphere, pulsed angry red patterns. Our neural networks have processed 847 trillion possible solutions. None achieve success probability above 0.003%. This entity operates beyond known physics. The morphic were living computers, their entire species a biological network that could solve problems across galactic scales. If they claimed helplessness, the situation was truly desperate. From the aquatic section, Ambassador Tidal Song of the Oceanic Federation sang her frustration in harmonic frequencies that made the water in Elena's glass vibrate. We have evacuated our deep space colonies to our core ocean worlds, but the plague follows. It feeds on all energy signatures, biological and technological alike. Our ancient coral mines, which have guided us for millennia, fall silent when it approaches. Elena had been listening to these debates for 18 standard days. 18 days of increasingly frantic proposals and increasingly desperate rejections. The Vorthic military leadership wanted to glass entire systems to create firebreaks. The enlightened Confederacy suggested uploading all consciousness to quantum storage until the plague passed. The Silicon Syndicate proposed abandoning physical existence entirely, becoming pure information. Every solution required unanimous consent from the Nexus Council. Every solution was blocked by at least 50 different species, each with their own concerns, their own survival priorities, their own political calculations. Elena had watched civilizations die, while delegates argued about trade route protection and resource allocation rights. The latest casualty report scrolled across her personal display. New Shanghai colony, 3 million humans, had been evacuated successfully just 12 hours before the plague reached their system. But the Caridian mining platforms in the same sector hadn't been so fortunate. 40 billion beings, gone in moments, while the Council debated the environmental impact of emergency faster than light travel restrictions. General Korath of the United Military Protocols finally stood, his massive reptilian form towering over his delegation. We cannot continue this paralysis. My battle fleets stand ready to implement the Scorched Void Protocol. We destroy everything in the plague's path, deny it fuel for expansion. His proposal had been on the table for a week, gaining support daily as desperation grew. The chamber erupted in protest. The peaceful alliance of garden worlds sang their rejection in perfect harmony. The ancient Archives Consortium projected horrified mathematical equations into the air. The Zilithian Prime Minister's crystalline form actually cracked with stress as he calculated the civilizational cost. Alina finally stood up. The simple motion somehow cut through the chaos, drawing hundreds of alien eyes to the quiet human in the corner. She had spoken only 17 times during the entire emergency session, usually to ask clarifying questions or request technical specifications. Now she walked slowly to the central speaking platform, her footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. "Honored delegates," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's translation matrix. "We have spent 18 days discussing solutions, while 37 star systems have fallen to the silent plague. In that same time period, the plague has accelerated its consumption rate by 340%. At current expansion velocity, it will reach Earth in 42 standard days." She paused, letting the mathematics sink in. "You have rejected every proposed solution due to political concerns, environmental impact assessments, trade relationship complications, or resource allocation disputes. You have treated this extinction-level event as a negotiation." The Morphic Collective's representative pulsed curious blue patterns. "Ambassador Vasquez, your species has offered no solutions beyond evacuation protocols and defensive preparations. Surely the famous human ingenuity has produced alternatives." Elena smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "We offered our cooperation 3 weeks ago. We provided detailed technical specifications for quantum containment fields that could slow the plague's advance. We shared our research on energy-based life forms, including theoretical frameworks for communication attempts. We volunteer our deep space exploration fleets for reconnaissance missions into plague-controlled territories." The Zilithian Prime Minister's form brightened with memory. "Yes, but your proposals required significant resource commitments from other council members. The quantum containment arrays would have required Zilithian crystal matrices, morphic processing power, and Oceanic Federation bioconductors. The costs were deemed prohibitive." "Prohibitive," Elena repeated slowly. "You deemed survival prohibitive." She turned to address the full assembly. 3 hours ago, the plague consumed the Caridian mining platforms, while you debated whether emergency evacuation protocols violated worker safety regulations. 6 hours ago, it devoured the artistic enclave of Melodia Prime, while you discussed the cultural preservation implications of refugee relocation. Her voice remained perfectly calm, but something in her posture had changed. The relaxed, diplomatic stance had been replaced by something more predatory, more focused. 12 hours ago, the plague reached the outer edge of human colonial space. We requested immediate implementation of our proposed containment protocols. You voted to table the discussion pending a full environmental impact study. The silence in the chamber was absolute now. Even the background hum of the station's environmental systems seemed muted. "So I'm here to inform you," Elena continued, "that humanity is withdrawing from the Nexus Trade Council, effective immediately. We are invoking Article 847 of the Emergency Powers Doctrine, claiming the right to independent action in defense of our species' survival." The eruption of protests, questions, and demands for clarification crashed over the chamber like a tsunami. Elena waited for the noise to subside before speaking again. "Fine," she said simply. "We'll handle it." The words sent a chill through the assembly. There was something in that simple phrase, something that reminded every species present why humanity had been granted council membership despite being one of the youngest civilizations in the galaxy. Something that recalled ancient warnings passed down through diplomatic channels. Humans were dangerous when cornered. Humans were unpredictable when abandoned. And humans were absolutely terrifying when they said those 4 simple words. Elena turned and walked toward the exit, her footsteps echoing in the stunned silence. As she reached the chamber doors, she paused and looked back at the assembled representatives of galactic civilization. "You had 47 different chances to work with us," she said quietly. "You chose politics over survival, procedure over people, and bureaucracy over existence itself." The doors began to iris open behind her. "Don't try to contact us. Don't follow us. And whatever you do, don't interfere with what comes next." She stepped through the doorway and was gone. The chamber remained silent for exactly 17 seconds before every delegate began speaking at once. The Zilithian Prime Minister attempted to establish order, but his voice was lost in the chaos. Emergency communication attempts to Earth were met with automated responses. The Terran Federation is currently unavailable. Please stand by. Within 6 hours, every human ship, station, and outpost in neutral space had vanished. Trade routes that had operated for centuries went silent. Human merchants, diplomats, researchers, and tourists simply disappeared, leaving behind only empty berths and puzzled alien customs officials. By the end of the first day, the galaxy's most extensive communication network registered 0 human transmissions. The species that had spent 3 centuries integrating themselves into galactic society had vanished as completely as if they had never existed. The silent plague, meanwhile, continued its relentless advance, consuming the artistic enclave of Melodia Prime exactly as Elena had predicted. As the Baroque towers and crystalline gardens dissolved into nothingness, the Nexus Trade Council finally voted to implement emergency measures. It was 36 hours too late. The human solution. The silence from human space was more terrifying than the plague itself. For 3 standard weeks, not a single human vessel had been detected anywhere in the galaxy. Every attempt at communication with Earth and its colonies met with the same response: quantum static. It was as if humanity had simply ceased to exist, leaving behind only empty space and unanswered questions. Ambassador Tidal Song of the Oceanic Federation floated in her emergency session pod, her bioluminescent patterns dim with exhaustion. Our deep space sensors detect nothing from human territories. No energy signatures, no quantum communications, no gravitational disturbances from ship movements. They have achieved perfect isolation. The Emergency Council chamber was far smaller than the main assembly hall, containing only the primary representatives from each major alliance. The silent plague had consumed 14 more star systems since Elena Vasquez's departure, and traditional diplomatic protocols had been abandoned in favor of rapid decision-making. General Korath paced behind his delegation, his massive claws clicking against the metallic flooring. My reconnaissance fleets report the same findings. The boundaries of human space are blocked by some form of quantum barrier. Our ships can approach to within 1 light year, but beyond that point, all sensors fail and navigation systems malfunction. The Morphic Collective's representative pulsed frustrated orange patterns. We have attempted to calculate human response patterns based on their historical behavior. The probability matrices are contradictory. Humans typically respond to threats with either overwhelming cooperation or overwhelming aggression. This complete withdrawal matches neither pattern. Zilithian Prime Minister Crystalline Thought projected his concern in shimmering displays of light. Perhaps their isolation is their solution. Create perfect barriers and wait for the plague to exhaust itself on other targets. The possibility hung in the air like a toxic cloud. If humanity had written off the rest of the galaxy as acceptable losses, the political implications were staggering. The emergency session was interrupted by an urgent transmission from the Kepler 442 sector, where the plague had just consumed its latest victim. Long-range sensors showed the familiar pattern, energy signatures fading one by one until only empty space remained. But this time, something was different. Enhanced magnification online, announced the station's eye. The main display zoomed in on the former location of the artistic enclave of Melodia Prime, where once beautiful crystalline cities had orbited a binary star system. Now there was only void. But in that void, something moved. The ship was unlike anything in the galactic databases. It was enormous, easily the size of a small moon, but its surface seemed to flow and shift like liquid metal. No traditional propulsion signatures were detected, yet it moved with purpose through the empty system. Most disturbing of all, its hull was completely black, absorbing all electromagnetic radiation like a mobile event horizon. Unknown vessel, General Korath attempted to hail it through standard communication protocols. You are entering a plague-infected system. Please identify yourself and state your intentions. The response came not as words, but as a data packet that bypassed their communication systems entirely and appeared directly on their screens. The message was simple: stand clear, work in progress. The transmission signature was unmistakably human. As the delegates watched in stunned silence, the massive black ship began to do something impossible. Instead of fleeing the plague-infected space, it seemed to be attracting the energy parasites. The quantum distortions that marked the plague's presence began converging on the vessel's location, drawn by some invisible force. Magnify the area around the ship. Tidal songs sang in urgent harmonics. The display zoomed in further, revealing details that defied comprehension. The plague entities, previously invisible except for their effects on matter and energy, became visible as writhing streams of dark energy flowing toward the human vessel. But they weren't being destroyed. They were being collected. The ship's hull opened like a flower, revealing internal structures that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. The plague entities flowed into these openings like water finding its level, disappearing into the vessel's interior without resistance. Where the entities had been consuming and destroying everything they touched, now they moved with apparent cooperation toward the human ship. This is impossible, crystalline thought projected in sharp, panicked light patterns. The plague entities show no intelligence, no communication ability, no social structure. They are pure consumption, pure destruction. They cannot be negotiated with or controlled. The data packet updated. Incorrect assumptions. Please maintain safe distance while we complete collection procedures. More ships began appearing throughout the plague-affected regions. Each was unique in design but shared the same flowing, organic architecture and light-absorbing hull materials. Some were shaped like massive jellyfish, others resembled twisted spirals or geometric impossibilities. All of them were engaged in the same activity, collecting the plague entities with the gentle efficiency of farmers harvesting crops. The Morphic Collective attempted to scan the ships with every sensor array at their disposal. The results were incomprehensible. These vessels register as both technological and biological. They show properties of living tissue, quantum computation matrices, and space-time manipulation fields. Our analysis suggests they are not built but grown. Days passed as the human collection operation continued. System after system that had been declared lost to the plague was visited by the strange ships. In each location, the plague entities were carefully gathered and transported to unknown destinations. The process was neither violent nor rushed. If anything, it resembled a rescue operation more than a military campaign. Elena Vasquez reappeared exactly 3 weeks after her dramatic departure from the Nexus Council. She walked into the emergency session chamber as if she had never left, carrying the same thermos of coffee and wearing the same diplomatic smile that had frustrated alien negotiators for years. "Honored delegates," she began, taking her seat at the human section of the chamber. "I trust you've been monitoring our cleanup operations." The explosion of questions, demands, and accusations that followed was immediate and overwhelming. Elena waited patiently for the noise to subside, sipping her coffee and checking her personal display for updates. Ambassador Vasquez, General Korath finally managed to establish speaking priority. "Explain the meaning of these operations. Your ships appear to be collaborating with the plague entities rather than destroying them." Elena smiled with genuine warmth for the first time in weeks. "That's because we discovered something the rest of you missed during all those emergency sessions. The so-called silent plague isn't a plague at all. They're children." The silence that followed was absolute. Children. Tidal songs' harmonic frequencies cracked with disbelief. These entities have consumed entire civilizations. Juvenile cosmic entities, Elena clarified, her voice taking on the patient tone of a teacher addressing confused students. Specifically, they're the larval stage of something called void shepherds, ancient cosmic beings that mature over geological timescales and eventually become gardeners of entire galactic clusters. She activated a holographic display showing the familiar energy patterns of the plague entities, but now the data was overlaid with additional information. When we first encountered them 3 months ago, our xenobiologists noticed something everyone else missed. The entities weren't consuming randomly. They were feeding on specific types of energy signatures, and they were growing. The display shifted to show developmental charts that looked like something from a biology textbook. Void shepherds begin their life cycle as pure energy beings that must consume massive amounts of varied energy sources to fuel their development. In their juvenile stage, they're essentially cosmic caterpillars, devouring everything they can reach because they're literally starving. Crystalline thoughts form, dimmed with shock. You're claiming these destructive entities are merely hungry children. Hungry, lost, and separated from their parents, Alina confirmed. Adult void shepherds normally guide their young to appropriate feeding grounds in empty space, areas rich in cosmic background radiation and stellar waste energy. But something disrupted this group's migration pattern, leaving them stranded in populated space with no guidance and an overwhelming need to feed. The implications hit the assembly like a physical blow. They had been trying to destroy children. Lost, frightened children who were eating everything in sight because they didn't know better. Our response, Alina continued, was to build ships capable of communicating with them on their energy frequency. We learned their language, explained the situation, and offered to help them find their way home to proper feeding grounds. She gestured to the display, which now showed the locations where the collected entities were being relocated. We've identified 17 suitable cosmic nurseries in uninhabited regions where they can complete their development safely. Adult void shepherds have already been contacted and are en route to collect their young. The morphic collective pulsed confused blue patterns, but the consumption, the destruction of entire systems. They were starving, Alina said simply. Imagine if you were lost in a desert, dying of thirst, and you found what looked like water. You wouldn't stop to ask if someone owned it. You'd drink first and worry about property rights later. She paused. The difference is, these children were powerful enough to accidentally consume star systems while trying to survive. General Korath's massive form had gone completely still. How long have your people known this? Alina's expression grew serious. We suspected something was wrong with the plague theory after the first week of attacks. The consumption patterns were too organized, too purposeful. It took our scientists another 2 weeks to develop communication protocols and confirm our hypothesis. 2 weeks, Tidal Song whispered. You knew the truth 2 weeks ago. We tried to share our findings, Alina reminded them. Remember our proposal for theoretical frameworks for communication attempts? That was us trying to tell you these entities could be talked to. You rejected the proposal because it required too many resources from too many species. The chamber fell silent as the delegates recalled those heated debates, the political calculations, the endless procedural delays. While they had argued about costs and jurisdiction, humanity had been quietly solving the crisis through pure, stubborn compassion. The collection operation will be complete within 6 standard days, Alina announced. All juvenile void shepherds will be relocated to appropriate development environments, and adult shepherds will implement better migration guidance protocols to prevent future incidents. She stood and gathered her materials, the same casual departure gesture that had preceded humanity's mysterious disappearance weeks ago. But this time, she paused at the chamber doors and looked back at the assembled representatives. For the record, she said quietly, we didn't withdraw from galactic society to abandon you. We withdrew because we needed to work without political interference. Sometimes, the best way to save everyone is to stop asking for permission. As Alina disappeared through the doors, the emergency session chamber remained silent for a long time. Outside the windows, they could see human ships continuing their gentle rescue operations, gathering lost children from the dark spaces between stars and guiding them home to safety. The galaxy had learned something important that day. When humans said, "Fine, we'll handle it," they didn't mean they would destroy the problem. They meant they would understand it, solve it, and probably end up adopting it in the process. The Nexus Trade Council would spend the next several years revising their emergency response protocols. The new procedures included a special provision: when humanity offers help, accept it immediately. Because by the time you finish debating, they'll have already solved your problem and moved on to fixing something else.